Hey guys, welcome back to yet another video on my channel. Today, I will be discussing Watchmen episode 9 entitled See How They Fly. But as usual, I will not be talking about the series finale of this miniseries by myself. I will be joined by my good friend, Matt Crandall. Welcome back, Matt.
Thanks for having me.
We start off with Adrian Veidt making the video message that LG saw when he was kidnapped by the Seventh Cavalry, and it's something really funny. While he was making the video, the guy recording the video or somebody in the room coughed, so they had to cut the take and they had to do it again. But it was so funny because you could see Adrian Veidt getting frustrated at the guy that coughed while he was recording the thing, so I had to start again. What we see next is we see a cleaning lady go into Adrian Veidt's office and type some things into his computer, and it turns out that Adrian Veidt has a very, very, very unique little thing where he has vials of his spunk behind a picture of a Greek god in his office. So this individual takes a vial of Adrian Veidt's spunk and basically puts it into a gun vial, or I don't know what you call those things, and basically shoots herself up with a vial of Adrian Veidt's spunk.
Anytime Damon Lindelof does a show, we are going to watch a video or a film within the show, and 99% of the time, we will then later see the recording of that video or film. So, countless times we watched videos on Lost, or even there's something that you watch on Mrs. Davis that you don't necessarily know is a commercial. And then later we go back and see how they filmed that. So when we started seeing Adrian Veidt recording the message to Redford in the 80s, I was like, of course, like this is a Lindelof show. We were going to have to see how this video got made. That's just how he does it. So I thought it was really funny when we could see Adrian Veidt getting pissed off that this guy ruined his take and he's got to keep going. And then I found it super, super weird and confounding when he's got this secret jizz fridge behind his picture of Ozymandias. And I'm like, what in the absolute hell is this? And to see this lady steal it and inject it, and we start to kind of put two and two together that we've been waiting to find out the relationship between Adrian Veidt and Lady True. And then the scene after that explicitly tells us that, yes, this was her mother stealing this vial, impregnating herself without Adrian Veidt knowing, because she wanted to have a kid who was one of the smartest people in the world. And as they say later, your intelligence wasn't given, it was stolen. And so I thought that idea of, even in her conception, being some sort of weird deception. So like, we know Lady True is power hungry. She's willing to do anything and cross any lines to get what she wants, just like her mother was in even finding a way to have this baby. So it's weird how that kind of echoes through the generations, and to get that from her mother and the creative genius genocidal maniac aspect from her father gives us a lot of insight into what this character actually is and what kind of person she is.
This episode really brings up the interesting question of what power does to people, and and what they believe they're old because of their circumstances, right? And it also brings up the question of, if you could, would you? And if you had the power to, would you? And I think that this episode is full of things that Damon Lindelof has played with countless times in his career. One of those things being religion, and the way that he incorporated that with Lady True and her clothing and what she wears and what she thinks of herself. Um, in mass is really interesting. Like, for example, when she goes to see Adrian Veidt in the Arctic in 2008 to sort of ask him for the money to fund her big Millennium Clock. And when Adrian Byte told her that when my parents died, I inherited all their fortune, but I gave it away because I wanted to prove to society that I could achieve without being handed a silver spoon. I really think that's commendable. But the problem with Adrian Veidt and with Lady True, as we find out, these people are narcissists and they're maniacs. And not when narcissism and mania and when narcissism and mania comes into the picture with a lot of people, it never ends up good. So I thought that this episode said a lot about people who have the power to do good but don't do good because of their true nature, because they want the world to be a certain way.
That is a thing that is definitely present throughout the entire episode. Not to jump ahead entirely, but in the last 5 minutes, one of the last lines Will says is he could have done more, talking about
Mhm.
Dr. Manhattan and saying like he had all this power, but for so long he didn't use it for what could have been good. He could have done more. And imagine if someone who's willing to actually do the right thing and do more were to have that power. And that's one of the underlying themes of this whole show is, sometimes the people who have the power aren't willing to actually do the right thing or the hard thing for the greater good. They're willing to do the thing that gives them fortune and glory and boost their ego rather than what's actually right.
I think that it takes a very, very special individual to be given a specific amount of power and for that individual to put their well-being and their and their faith in the back seat for the greater good of all those people around them or in their orbit or in their lives. That doesn't happen very often. People in our society are very, very selfish and very, very narrow-minded.
Even from the creators of this show, that's something also that even in the entertainment industry, there are very few people who are willing to put their reputation on the line to raise someone else up. Often they close the door behind them and other people, you know, try and use their clout to actually help other people up and do the right thing and keep things going. So I think that's also something that these creators probably have experienced even in their line of work, because the entertainment industry also has this weird hierarchy of power that, some people can do more than they do and other people don't because it's all about ego.
I was really pleased that this episode was all thriller and no filler, because after that conversation with uh, Adrian Veidt and Lady True in the Arctic, where we find out that Lady True is one of the specimens, and we find out how Lady True's Lady True got her satellite into space and all that stuff. We are thrown back to see Lori and some guy by the name of LG we haven't seen in a while. They happen to be at the 7th Cavalry's headquarters, where the head of the entire 7th Cavalry is gathering to see them capture Dr. Manhattan in their little box that they have. I really like it scene because Senator Keene uh, basically says that we shouldn't be held accountable because of the sins of our ancestors. We shouldn't be held accountable because of the color of our skin. And I'm sitting there going, that is true. You shouldn't be held accountable for the circumstances that you were born with, but you have a choice to be a good person or a racist asshole. It all comes down to choice and what you decide to do. And just because the world isn't like the way, just because the world isn't the way that you want it to be, doesn't give you the right to treat other people badly because you don't like them or you don't like the way that they look. I really, really liked his whole speech to Lori and to Angela when she got there, and I really like the part where Angela tried to convince Senator Keene not to go into the little machine that was going to transfer Dr. Manhattan's powers to Senator Keene, essentially making Senator Keene um, Dr. Manhattan. I really like that she tried to save his life, essentially, even though that she, even though that he's a racist asshole.
So I'll say I thought this is where the episode really picked up. So most of it, the first 20 minutes is all Vite. We see him talking to the head ranger or whatever, that clone who was keeping things in line, the game warden, and say that, I've been trapped here for 8 years and I gave you this mask and gave you this thing to be my adversary so that my 8 years wouldn't be so fucking boring, so that I would actually have something to do. And he says, "Oh, was I a good adversary?" And the guy's like, "No, you were shit. you you were terrible, but that's why I gave you this mask and this thing to keep things spicy for me." And we see that when he arranged the bodies on the surface of whatever moon that was, he didn't write just save me, he wrote save me daughter. And so it was explicitly a message to Lady True, who then did retrieve Vite off of that and got him out of that circumstance. So I think a couple of things about that. I think Jeremy Irons has been incredible on this show. They gave us a lot of answers that I was kind of getting antsy, where I'm like, get me to the other stuff, because I didn't really need to know some of the stuff about the game warden and the clones, and spelling out how he got off the planet becomes kind of important with his relationship with his daughter later. But those first 20 minutes of the finale, I was like, okay, but where are my people for the main story? And then we caught up with Looking Glass, Laurie, Dr. Manhattan, and seeing that Seventh K has Laurie held hostage. Looking Glass starts talking to her, and he's like, "Just be cool, and I'll get us out of here." And I like when she's doesn't catch on who it is at first, and then she's like, "Wait, mirror guy?" And he's like, "It's Looking Glass, you bitch." But yes, that's me. And 7K came, and now I'm working with them, but I'm not, and I'm gonna try and get us out of here. And as we see that their machine has worked, that they have trapped Dr. Manhattan. So when he got zapped at the end of last week, it was kind of up in the air of what actually had happened, because we didn't see him go into the cage, but now we see he's in this cage. And he's in a compromised position. Manhattan knows that this is kind of the end of him from the way he's been talking. But when they catch him, he's disoriented because he's in all the different times at once. And I thought that was really handled well. And to see him in a weak position, low status for once, whereas Dr. Manhattan is usually a very high status character, was in an interesting dynamic. And as you said, Keen goes on this rant that literally, like, you can jump on social media and see people doing this same rant every day. Where they're like, it's so hard to be a middle-aged white guy, why is my life so tough? And it's like, come on, dude. Like, you have been given every advantage, and if you treat people like crap, you're gonna deserve to be treated like crap. And I thought his speech was very telling, and I love when we find out, like, yes, he wants to become Dr. Manhattan. Last week we figured that out. And then we see that he's going to get into this machine and do some sort of transfer of power. So much so that he puts on literally the Dr. Manhattan Speedo from the Watchmen graphic novel. Like, he's not hanging dong in this one. He's going to be wearing the signature Dr. Manhattan thing. And seeing James Woke hanging out just wearing that was kind of comical and funny, because it's this iconic black diaper from the Watchmen graphic novel that, seeing some dude wear that before he's Dr. Manhattan looked absolutely ridiculous. I was like, what are we doing here? But I thought that seeing all of 7K together in one place, getting ready for their big moment, knowing that their big moment is not going to play out the way that they want, because we already know that Lady True is 3 steps ahead. 7th Cavalry is playing checkers. She's been playing chess this whole time. I thought that was all really fascinating as the big finale starts to unfold.
The one thing that I was really surprised about was you and I had speculated for weeks on end in some of our earlier episodes. We believed that Lady True was in league with the Seventh Cavalry, and to we learn in during Keen's giant speech that the batteries that they used to charge the cage that they trapped Dr. Manhattan in, they stole from her warehouses. Angela says, "Do you really think that you could go into Lady True's warehouses and just take her batteries like that? She allowed you to take them because she didn't say this, but basically Angela said she has another plan." But also, I really love Senator Keen's. At this point, he's just fucking tired of it. He goes into the machine, and then all hell breaks loose when it goes off. This giant shockwave whoosh, envelops the whole place, and then Lady True, with her minion army, show up. Her minion army disarms the Seventh K people, and she just sort of starts out to do a speech to basically, you know, give out her whole evil plan, right? Like a big ha 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 mustaching villain. And I love that Vass Reeves gave her a speech to say to the Seventh Cavalry, but Jed's widow halfway through the speech goes, "You know what? Fuck it. You know, just fucking do it already." And Lady True goes, "Do what?" And she goes, "You're gonna kill us, right?" And I love the way that the actress says it. She says, "Oh yeah." I just love that line reading so much. And then she takes a big control thing, and she basically redirects the energy from her big time clock to vaporize 7K entirely, which I just love. But before that, sorry, I skipped the part. Before Lady True gives her speech, she asks, where's Senator Keene, right? Because at this point, the blast just went off, and Senator Keene hasn't come out of his little chamber thing. So Lady True opens up the little chamber thing, and, and Senator Keene is evaporated. There's nothing left of the poor guy. There's blood and little pieces of body everywhere. But an interesting thing, his matter goes into Dr. Manhattan's cage just a little bit. And Dr. Manhattan just touches his blood and sort of uses that to get his last little bit of energy to transport LG, Lori, and Adrian Veidt back to the Arctic.
Yeah, this is where like a lot of a lot of shit starts going down. And I love that stupid Senator Keene didn't actually work out the science properly. And Lady True is like, what a friggin' moron. When you transfer this power, if you don't filter the power, then it just pops you like a balloon. And she opens the chamber, and it's the fucking shining elevator, and it comes out, and it's Senator Keene is just goo. It's bloody goo. And I thought that was great because he just gave his big racist rant. So it's very satisfying to watch this white supremacist explode. And then for finally in a moment, John gets to touch the blood and harness that power to transport Lori, LG, and Veidt away. And he had told Angela earlier, don't touch the light or whatever it was he said to her. And so she also says, like, why am I still here? He says, because I want someone here when I die. I don't want to be alone. So I didn't transport you away, and hopefully those people can come up with a plan and save the day. But also it was very satisfying when Lady True, Hong Chao is great, and I like when she starts to monologue. She starts to monologue her evil plan and why she's doing this. And Judd's widow is just like, just fucking do it. Stop talking. And she's like, do what? Well, you're going to kill us, aren't you? And just the way she says, well, yeah, of course. Of course I'm going to kill you, was great. And I love watching the 7th Cavalry just get evaporated. So that's fun. And then when, Dr. Manhattan's final moments play out, it is shocking and kind of heartbreaking to see this character that was thought unkillable get killed. So it's one of those things like we didn't even know that was ever possible in the world of Watchmen, that you would be able to do this. And for Angela to be at his side as he dies was very powerful. And and well done. And then we figure out how they are maybe going to be able to stop Lady True. So I like that we're bringing back the baby squids, that the whole time we have wondered what the point of the baby squids falling from the sky actually was. And here, when LG, Lori, and Vite are in his base, Vite says, I have an idea. This might be the only thing we can do. When was the last baby squid shower? And Lori's like, fucked if I know. And of course, because we know LG times this stuff to the minute, he's like, it was 3 weeks ago exactly. This was the time. And so Vite's like, okay, great. We're going to schedule one right now. But what we're going to do is we're going to freeze the baby squids, because normally they land harmlessly and they dissolve away 30 seconds later, no problem. But if we freeze them, it will be like bullets are raining down from the sky. And it's a very like kind of Magnolia-esque moment where finally we have shit just falling from the sky in a crazy fashion. But I love that Lady True does not see this coming in any way, because she believes that she is so smart that she has seen every possible outcome and that she is outsmarted 7th K and her plan is coming together perfect. And so she goes into the machine to get the Dr. Manhattan power and turn herself into this powerful being under the guise of she wants to do good and she wants to be like the better version of Dr. Manhattan. But Vite even says, I've seen the real her. And I know that the minute she turns blue, she is going to make everyone bow down and kiss her feet. And so we already kind of understood that she's probably not like an altruistic, good kind of person, but even her father can recognize that she's after the wrong thing. And so I love when she's in the machine and she's literally seconds away from getting that power and winning the day. And the baby squids finally start to arrive and she gets a gigantic hole in her hand. And the look on Hong Chau's face when she looks through, and when a villain realizes in an instant that their plan has failed and they are beaten, I thought it was a perfect look. And then we get the madness of hide from the raining squids. And I thought that whole sequence was really exciting. And finally, it's bringing back, that baby squid raining thing was like a weird, why did he need to do that? Well, it was there so that we could have this moment in the finale.
Yes, that moment when Lady True steps into her machine to be basically inherit the powers of Doctor Manhattan. What do you think about all the religious imagery in that moment? Because I thought, because seriously, I thought that the director and Damon and Carlton Hughes, who wrote this episode, were basically hitting us over the head with the fact that Lady True thinks that she's God, and if you can't read it, the visual markers are there. She's wearing white. She puts a thing on her head that looks like the thing that Jesus wore when he was crucified. And when she steps into the machine, the director does a great side shot of Lady True's face, and there you see the cross. I'm like, Jesus, guys, we get it.
That's the shot that you can't miss. Even the dumbest person in the audience has to realize when they cut to that shot where literally half the screen is Lady True's face and half of it is Jesus on the cross. And when the cross falls off the wall as everything starts coming down, it's very explicit. So the costuming and all that stuff is a little bit more subtle, but then they're like, just in case for the dum-dums in the crowd, we're going to make this very explicit. But it's a great shot. It looks fantastic. And I don't mind being a little bit unsubtle as we get into the final moments, because you want to make sure you land the plane and you don't have the worst kind of people reading the wrong things into your show that tackles very heavy modern themes.
I really, really thought that Regina King's performance as Angela was fantastic in the moment leading up to Dr. Manhattan dying, because the emotion, the direction, the way that she cried on cue, it was the way that she stayed there until the last possible second, I thought was absolutely great. And like you mentioned, to just back up a little bit, in the final moments of John's life, when he says, when Angela says, "Where are you right now?" and John says, "I'm in every single moment of our lives together." I thought that was just great. That to me was tied for like one of the best moments of the entire episode. So This finale, I just really appreciated that Damon took the time to basically almost tie up everything that he and his writers introduced earlier on in the series, and he really gave he gave a great character arc to his main character Angela, and he made her really understand where her hatred came from and where her brokenness came from. And I thought that he did a really good job of really really doing a character study on someone who is broken, understanding why she's broken, and then having her come to the conclusion that just because she's broken, that doesn't mean that she doesn't deserve to be happy. The other thing that Damon dealt with in this series is what trauma does to someone and what hate does to another to individuals who experience it. So I thought that I thought that those two things were a some really great hallmarks for Damon and the rest of the writers to construct a Watchmen sequel story around. The one thing I didn't like at all, when Angela starts to run away from the squids, she has that conversation with Will, which I'll kick to you in just 1 second to talk about that scene. I thought that this episode was a little long, and I understood why he needed to do it because he set it up in episode 9 with the egg and with the egg and the water thing. I get that, but I thought that he should have Carlton should have cut this episode a little short. What do you think of all the stuff when Angela went to the feeder where Will was taking care of her kids?
Yeah, so I will talk about that real quick, but you mentioned it and I just want to shout it out that I think Regina King is phenomenal overall, but that moment when Dr. Manhattan dies and the power is expelled, she is thrown backwards and into like a silo. She like hits this thing and falls down. But the slow motion shot of her flying backwards, the look on Regina King's face, realizing that her husband and this being have died, the emotion that she presents in this like 5 second slow motion shot is phenomenal. So like I just she's great in all of it, but that scene where it's a powerful scene where it's Manhattan's End and this slow motion of her being thrown back and just the look on her face is absolutely amazing. Um, so I love all of that. And as you said, the themes that this show really explored is actually like a very common theme for a lot of our shows nowadays, which is generational trauma. Does that carry over to the next generation? Do you get this baggage from your family that the trauma is kind of inherited? And can you break away from it? Can you find a way to to set a different course even with all the weight of the past? And that is a very HBO theme. Succession just ended on HBO, and that was a major theme of that show where they said, does the poison drip through from your father to you? So if they were a bad person or they went through this horrible trauma, are you already set back before the game has even started because of what came before you? And that's what this Watchmen show really explored in the way that the generational trauma of race relations colors so many people's lives that when the game starts, some people are already forced spaces back because of everything that their family has been through previous. And I thought it was really handled well, but it's a theme that a ton of shows now, like it's a very popular theme, but I think Watchmen was one of the first to really tackle it head on in terms of the generational trauma of race. And that was interesting. But when we get to that movie theater and Will, back where we first met him in a movie theater, when he was a child, that was the first time we saw him, was he was watching a movie. And so we know that everything he's been through, the movie theater is still Will's safe space. So even though he's now 100 years old or whatever it is, pain feels great in a place like this or whatever it is. And so I think having that scene take place there thematically is terrific. And I like that Angela kind of gets caught up and she's like, I can't believe like this. My life has been completely upended since I met you. And still, she's going to always wonder, did my whole life get upended because I asked John to ask you that one thing? That you never would have come here. You never would have known about Judd, but I did this. And so that weird balance. Um, but I really like their scene together. And as I mentioned earlier, when Will says, you know, Dr. Manhattan, yeah, he was powerful. Yeah, he was good. He could have done more and he didn't. And so like, yeah, it's sad that the guy died, but he didn't live up to his potential. And I think that the implications of that, and I would only slightly differ in that my my favorite part of the show is the ending. So if they actually didn't have it, I don't think I would like it half as much. So I like that we have spent so much time seeing Angela wrestle with these events that have been thrust upon her. And again, the generational thing when her adopted kid sees the Sister Knight costume and like something clicks for him that he's like, oh, he kind of gets it and he's looking at it and he's looking at her and he's looking at it and he's looking at her. And we know that like he's going to carry that weight, knowing that Angela was this masked crusader further into the future. And I thought that was fascinating. But then just calling back to the first time she met Manhattan, and he talks about this hypothetical way he could transfer his powers. And we see the one egg there. And so we start to wonder, did he do this when he could see that this was the way? Did he try and gift Angela the power so that she can do better? She can be more and live up to the potential that Dr. Manhattan maybe didn't. And when she eats the egg and then the last shot is just the foot touching the water and we cut away. So we don't know. It's up to us. Does she fall right into the pool? Does she gracefully glide across the top of the water and turn blue and make a huge difference in the world? It's up to us. We can decide what happens from here because they're not going to do a second season, which they really set up that if they wanted to, it could be fascinating. But I like that we end it open-ended where it's up to the viewer. If you're optimistic or if you're pessimistic, you can kind of decide the ending. Oh, she fell into the pool and it didn't work. And that's the end of this story. Or she turned into a new Dr. Manhattan and made a world of difference in the world. And that's where it went from here. It's choose your own adventure. And I kind of thought that was great. And it made it more satisfying to me that we didn't see either way what that was going to be. But if we didn't have it, then I would have a lot of questions about, well, what was this all about? Manhattan got killed and things kind of don't change.
I really like your viewpoint on things, but I would have done the same. I would have. I'll just let me pitch this idea to you. As Angela in in the second to last moment of the entire series, Angela's in her kitchen, about to clean up the egg, right? And then we see a flashback to episode 9 when John decides to make waffles for some apparent reason. He says, "Watch the eggs," and Angela picks up. She starts cleaning the eggs and she opens the carton and there's one egg in it. I would have cut back to the conversation that they had in the bar of documents hadn't saying, I guess if I wanted to admit my energy into an object, I could. And theoretically, if somebody ate that object, they couldn't inherit my powers. I would have done that and done just a go back to Angela in the kitchen, do a close up on Angela and the egg, and then credits. Something really pissed me off about the pool scene. And you know what it was? You know what it was? You alluded to it. I hated that. I view the pool scene as like, oh, just in case if somebody wants to do a season 2, here's a place where you could start. I hated that. Cuz I'm like, dude, you look, Damon must have known when he wrote that he wasn't going to come back. So he was like, I don't have to unravel this. So I'll just do it. That really it really ticks me off when writers put things into scripts knowing that they don't have to unravel it because because they're not going to come back, or they're just going to leave it there for the next guy to worry about it. I'm not saying that that was hubris, but I think that was him kind of going, uh, I'm going to put this here, and this is the other guy's problem if they choose to do more, because because what I did, I'm good. I'm going to move on now. That's my only issue with the pool scene. I understand where you're coming from, and I get it. That's the way it played to me, as Damon Lindelof saying, "I'm going to do this because if they choose to come back for a new season, this won't be my problem to unravel."
Right. Well, I can understand that. I do think that ending it where you said to end it is kind of the same thing. It's just a different visual. But I love the pool visual. I love the water and the walking on water and the, is she Jesus now or not? I like that, and I think that the visual of just the foot, we can't tell if it's going to stop or if it's going to keep going, was
Right.
handled really well. So shout out to the director Frederick E.O. Toy, who did a great job overall with the episode. And I'm sure that that was in the script explicitly, like, the foot touching the water and we can't tell. But I enjoy that. And this director, shout out, he did a ton of episodes of the OC, one of my favorite shows of all time. So I was happy to see him show up and do Watchmen, which is certainly a different vibe than the OC. But that guy's a great visual director in these TV mediums.
Do you think the Adrian Veidt stuff was necessary, all of it? Like, because as I was sitting back looking at the story, I'm like, you could have done this story without Adrian Veidt, and you could have focused on another character, or made up another character, or bring somebody back from Watchmen, from the original comic, replace them, put them in the place of Adrian Veidt scenes. But with that being said, I do think that Jeremy Irons did a fantastic job as Adrian Veidt, and like you have said in previous episodes, that guy just chewed up the scenery. But I don't necessarily know if I was pleased with the story that Damon and his other writers chose to tell.
I would say my honest answer is I like the inclusion of Adrian Veidt in the story and how it comes around at the end. I don't think we actually needed any of the stuff with the clones or the game warden or any of that. That's all just adding flavor to the stew. So if we are going on just plot and theme, this could have been a 6-episode miniseries. They could have gotten all the plot and all the theme across in 6 hours instead of 9. I think that there is about 3 hours of stuff sprinkled in that is just the seasoning that doesn't necessarily affect the plot or direct themes, but adds more ambiance and vibes to the mix, which is something that an HBO show affords you. If this was on a different network, then they wouldn't have those moments. But that's where HBO says, we trust the artists. We're going to let these motherfuckers cook. Even if at the end of the day, we say, I bet we could have got the same meal in a more efficient way, but it's the other stuff that kind of adds the signature fingerprints to the mix. So if I were to, take a pass at this, like I said, I think 6 episodes would have been perfect. It would have been incredible, but the way that they've done it, I understand why. They want to do some weird shit and have a lot of questions that some get answered and some weave back and some don't. But even an episode like the LG episode and his alarm system, if we're just going in plot and theme, we would not have spent 45 minutes with that story. We would have spent 5 minutes with him, but we want to add a little bit more depth to this stuff. And that's same with the Vite stuff, is they're just trying to add more depth to the history of this character since we last saw him. And I get it, but on a rewatch, you know, if I were to ever, I hadn't watched this since it aired in 2019. So it's the first time I've watched it in 4 years. So it was fine. If I were to watch it again next week, I would skip a ton of I would skip a ton of scenes because yeah, it's the spice of the extra vibes, but I don't necessarily need that if I'm rewatching it.
I've seen this. I've seen many episodes of the show various times, but I've never seen it. I haven't seen it all the way through since it aired 4 years ago. So this experience was very, very, very eye opening because I still love the show, but there are these lingering things that I don't think quite worked for reasons that I've said in the weeks past and in this episode. But ultimately, I think that this is one of the finest TV shows about superheroes without actually being about superheroes that anybody has ever made. Now, granted, guys, when you listen to me right now, when I say anything about Damon Lindelof, unless I'm seriously, seriously critical, you can't take my because I love the guy as a creative force. So with Damon Lindelof, I can be objective, but I don't know how objective I can be or how far it goes. But with Lost, I was pretty hard on the guy, as I was on Carlton Q. So I think I'm okay. Do you think that we're ever going to see Watchmen again, like another incarnation of the show, or in the movies?
I don't necessarily think we're going to see another Watchmen because knowing that Alan Moore hated that they even did this as the creator of Watchmen and he thinks that this is blasphemy and didn't want them to do it. Um, I don't know that anybody else would be willing to tackle something that's kind of a no-win scenario because the diehard fans rail against it. But even if you like it, as this shows, there's only so much you can do without running it into the ground. So like they didn't want to keep going because they thought that they pulled off everything they wanted to accomplish. And if you do more, it's just diluting the power of what Watchmen means. But we live in an IP driven universe right now where like anything that has ever existed, they are more likely to make than they are something new. So do I think that 10 years from now we might have another Watchmen series? Maybe. Is it a good idea? I don't think so. But depending on the IP landscape, never say never because they're always looking for something new to mine.
I would just like to say thank you for these 9 weeks and being willing to talk about Watchmen with me. It was a blast, Matt, and I hope you had fun.
Yeah, man, I had a good time. Thanks for having me on.
As we say goodbye now, if the folks at home want to catch up with you and see what you're doing or your adventures online, what will be the place for them to do that on?
On Twitter at Matt Crandall, on YouTube, Armchair Directors, and on podcast formats at Radio 815.
All right, guys. And as always, if you want to catch anything that I'm doing online whatsoever, the best place where you can do that, you can get links to all my things that I do, including Radio 815 and some other things as well. You can find me on Twitter. I'm at QuickFanatic88. But as always, until next time, I'll see you when I see you.
So much happened here, and so much is about to.